Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Let's move on to Brexit, because Boris Johnson, the former Foreign Secretary, has become the 44th MP to publicly declare support for the Stand Up for Brexit group. This is a video he posted on Twitter. Let's have a look.
On June 23rd, 2016, the people of this country voted to take back control of our money that we send to the European Union, our borders, and above all, our laws, so that we can not only vary our regulation, do things differently, but also do free trade deals around the world. And I'm afraid to say that the proposals our government is now putting forward, the so-called Chequers proposals, would make that impossible.
Well, that was Boris Johnson. I'd like to welcome Angela Smith MP, not Angela Smith, the Labour leader in the Lords. You may say it's an easy mistake to make, but not on this programme. Apologies, but welcome. I mean, Amber, listening to that, he's the 44th MP to come out for this group. 48 letters of no confidence would trigger a vote against Theresa May. How safe is she?
Well, these are different 40s. Let's not confuse people to think that the 44 people who think that the Prime Minister's proposals are unacceptable are the same. We don't know. I do think that she's safe. Controversial, I know, but the fact is that whoever was leading the Conservative Party now would have the same problem with the numbers. The numbers are that the MPs are divided on how we leave the European Union. And until the actual deal is brought back and we get to vote on it, we won't know who will support it and who won't.
What do you think of Boris Johnson joining the Stand Up for Brexit group and what he said there in his video?
Do you know, I am exhausted by being asked what I think about Boris.
Apart
from obviously wanting to give him a hairbrush every time I see him. I'm not surprised. You know, this is Boris resigned over the Chequers deal, so naturally he's going to at some stage come out and say he doesn't support it.
Does Theresa May have to go if she doesn't change her approach, when you've just heard what Boris Johnson says and what the Stand Up for Brexit campaign believes in?
Well, these things change on a day-to-day basis, don't they? I think we were all reading the Sunday papers thinking, oh my God, she could be gone by the end of the week. And yet yesterday she put in a good performance in the House of Commons, reassured, actually, I think quite a lot of people on the Brexit side of the debate. I don't know whether she's going to appear before the 1922 committee on Wednesday or not. But she does appear a little bit safer now than she was a couple of days ago. I don't think she's safe in the long term. I think when you can't carry the majority of your parliamentary party with you on something, we all know, and I suspect Amber would agree with me, that the Chequers as a proposal is dead. It didn't get any agreement on the Brexit side. Well, in any form, actually. I don't see that can progress, and I suspect you will hear her talking less and less about it and not even mentioning the word.
Do you think it is dead?
No, I don't. I don't think it's
Really?
dead, Ian, because she's going to bring back a deal, I believe, a negotiated settlement, let's call it. It's going to come to Parliament, and at that point, people are going to have to decide whether they support leaving the EU or not, because if it's not voted for, then anything could happen after that. And I think that some of those 44, not perhaps Boris, might take a view that they'd rather support this than that.
I think for Conservative MPs, wherever they are, whether they're on the sort of extreme Remain side or the extreme Brexit side, I think that you're right. When it comes back, it's going to take quite a bit of courage for a Conservative MP to vote against their own government on that kind of deal. It will be a fudge. It'll be a fudge that you don't like. It'll be a fudge that I don't like. But I don't see it falling. I think there will be a parliamentary majority for it.
Just before I come to you, Leila, let's have a look at the Daily Mail, because they have said today enough is enough.
The new Daily Mail.
With a new editorial line, or certainly on its opinion pages. The peacocking saboteurs out to knife Mrs May are dragging their party and their country towards the abyss. Angela, do you agree with the message there?
I have some sympathy with the message. I think the problem is that back in 2016, when Theresa May became Prime Minister, she really made the mistake of not choosing to resist the temptation of falling in with the views of the hardline Brexiteers.
Well,
and what she should have done, has she? Well, I think she has. But what
why are they all against her when they've they're obviously sending in letters, a lot of them.
What she needed to do at that point is recognise that there was a very close vote, 48% voted to stay in, and the best compromise was to say, yes, we're leaving, but we're leaving on the softest possible terms.
Right,
a mistake was made at that point.
Should Brexiteers let Theresa May get on with the negotiations?
Well, clearly she'll have to get on with the negotiations. The key point is the one that Amber made. It's the vote, the meaningful vote in Parliament. And yesterday we heard that it's not going to be a meaningful vote at all.
Right.
It's going to either be her deal or no deal. That's unacceptable to Parliament. It really is.
Has the meaningful vote been taken away
No, I
from
think
MPs? Well, Dominic Raab wrote that letter and pretty well categorically said it would be their deal or no deal.
But that's not what he said yesterday in Parliament when he was challenged on whether there would be a meaningful vote. He repeated there would be a vote. After the vote, there will probably be, depending on what the procedure committee concludes, the amendments in that order. So,
You also made it clear that any vote that was based on trying to change the deal in any way would not be acceptable.
Yeah.
So effectively, it's no deal or the deal that's on the table.
Those sort of amendments, you're right.
Yeah.
You can't,
exactly.
But I think that's
That's the
okay. Once
problem.
the Prime Minister has come back with a deal, which is my point that sort of Ian and I are making, I think, it's endorsed by the 27 other countries and by the EU Commission. This is the offer. Are we leaving the EU or are we not? If it's turned down, then we move into a different territory.
I absolutely
So
agree.
I
And at
think-
that point, we do need the people's vote.
Well,
resolution but to go back to the
wait a minute,
people.
before we get there, are you
dear, oh
happy
dear.
with the transition period being extended
No, not at all.
in any way?
Well, I mean, I think if it is a choice of the transition period being extended by a few months, and I'm not even sure, I think it would probably have to be a year because the EU would want another £18 billion. If it can be negotiated that it's a few months and that there will be an absolute end date to the backstop, well, I suppose a lot of people would swallow that, but not much beyond that.
Would you swallow it, Layla? I mean, if it came to the fact that it was an extension of a few months to the transition period that allowed more time to get a better trade deal, or that the EU, which they're not agreeing to at the moment, were to say a temporary customs arrangement could be put in place until that free trade deal, would you be happy with that?
No, look, what this is coming down to, and what was clear yesterday in the House, is that this 5% that's left of the withdrawal agreement is all about Northern Ireland. There is no current plan for how they're going to fudge Northern Ireland. What I'm predicting is that there will be a form of words that will say something along the lines of, we will find a technological solution and we all know it's going to be in the next few years, and that will somehow marry with
Which the
an
European
extended
Parliament
transition.
and Commission have already said is possible.
Well,
but they like to ignore that.
no, our own select committee has said it's not possible. What I'm really worried about with all this rhetoric right now, and actually I blame myself partly for swallowing it, is this ramped up no deal rhetoric, because I don't think it's actually going to happen. And furthermore, the idea of a disorderly no deal is not going to happen. So what I'm worried about...
Well, how do you know it's not going to happen?
It's not going to happen because it's in no one's interest for that to happen. So what's going to happen instead is a bad deal is going to come back. And then it's going to be a choice between a bad deal and a ramped-up rhetoric no deal.
There is no deal that you could think was a good deal, is there? Let's face it.
Absolutely not.
And is that the same with you, Angela? Is there any deal that would be a good deal for you?
The deal that I want to see is one that keeps us in the single market and the customs union. But
So
if that doesn't happen...
staying in the EU?
No, it's not staying in the EU.
It's not. Of course
It's
it's not.
second-tier
Let
status.
Angela.
But the point I would make is that anything that kicks the can down the road is not acceptable to business. It gives no certainty for the long-term future. So I think Parliament needs to resolve
Can I just
this if it
explain,
possibly
bearing in
can.
mind there are 3 Remainers here against 1 person who's against Brexit, can I just explain
Different flavours, though.
I was going to say, and that's not fair either.
Well, I think it is completely fair that it is staying in the EU because the single market and the customs union are institutions of the EU. You have to obey the rules, even though you would have no say over
But you're not in the common
them.
agricultural policy, the common
No,
fisheries
fine,
policy.
you're not
Can
in
I
those
just-
things,
can I
but those are the
just-
2 key pillars of the EU.
I just want to challenge Ian on that. Ian,
Yeah.
just because you were a leaver doesn't mean you get to interpret the vote.
But do you?
The fact
Are
that
you
I'm a
honouring
member of
the spirit
Parliament
of the
and
vote?
another
You're
2 as well.
interpreting the
No,
vote,
but you're
so why
drawing
can't
this
I?
division as though the only people who can say what actually leaving the EU means are the people who campaign to
It
leave.
actually
That's
just
not
means
true.
leaving the
That's
EU.
right.
Brexit means Brexit.
Well,
Someone once
48%
famously said.
matter.
Well, that is not a wholly convincing argument.
Do you think
in my
any of the 3
48%
here are
matter.
honouring the letter and the spirit of the referendum result?
Well, look, Layla definitely wants to stay in the EU.
I do,
That's
but
clear.
I want to do it
Angela does as well.
democratically.
I
I
think
want to do it
Amber used to
democratically.
say that she respected the vote and argued against the second referendum. I don't think that's your position now,
I
is it?
respect, and I've been very frank, but I'm not someone who's just seen the light on leaving the EU. I respect it, but I regret it. But I do support the Prime Minister and wanting her to get a negotiated
believe
settlement.
All
we
right,
have to leave?
we're going to move on
Not
from
on
Brexit.
no-deal basis.
And
Exactly.
apologies if there was, I think there was a problem with your mic.
There was
if
indeed.
viewers couldn't quite hear Angela earlier. Now,
Theresa May has agreed to address a mass meeting of Conservative MPs tomorrow night about her Brexit plans. It comes amid more speculation over whether there could be enough support to trigger a leadership challenge. Earlier, Mrs May chaired a marathon cabinet meeting, much of it devoted to Brexit, with the Brexit Secretary Dominic Raab ordered to provide weekly updates on preparations for a deal or no deal scenario. Let's go live now to our political editor, Gary Gibbon. So, Gary, what did the Cabinet think about the progress of Brexit talks?
Remember, last week at the European Summit, it emerged that Theresa May was putting another option out there on the table for what happens to Britain at the end of the transition if a new relationship has not been devised, signed and sealed with the European Union. And she said that in addition to plans that were already out there for a temporary customs union, that maybe there should be a different plan, which is simply to roll the transition on, carry on in the sort of standstill transition where you carry on accepting the EU laws, but you're not at the table. This cabinet was the first opportunity for ministers to have a chat about that, and I'm told that there was some pretty direct arguments, strident stuff, sharper, I'm told, exchanges than sometimes they've been used to. Born-again leavers, as it were, like Jeremy Hunt and Sajid Javid, were challenging the idea of extending the transition, but the fruitiest language, as it often is on these occasions at the moment, came from the Attorney General, Sir Geoffrey Cox. And he, in his submission, as he called it, compared this whole notion to the first circle of hell in Dante's Inferno. I'm told there was a lot of pushback then from other ministers in the room supportive of Theresa May, David Lidington, David Gauke, the Education Secretary and others, and they were warning about the chaos that would result from no deal and the danger of tying the Prime Minister's hands. All of this happening in what was, it was explained beforehand, was not a decision-taking cabinet, but then we're getting used to them. They seem to significantly outnumber the actual decision-taking cabinets.
And Gary, presumably she's expecting a tough time from Conservative MPs at the 1922 tomorrow.
Yes, now this is the meeting that she was told she might have to go to. She's decided to go, and this is the one that someone billed at the weekend anonymously to a newspaper as an occasion when she should bring her own noose. I think the language will be toned down in there. I think that she'll get a lot of the arguments put to her that were put in the cabinet room today. Interestingly, one former minister is wandering around the House of Commons tonight saying he's going to tell her to her face that she should go. Whether he does that or not, well, we'll wait and see. But I think she has a pretty good idea that there are a few people out there approaching a dangerous number, 48, who have that in mind.
Thanks, Gary.